Welcome to the Wisepreneurs Podcast. I'm Nigel Rollins. This is the podcast for experienced independent professionals building a sustainable practice on what they already know. You want to work independently, but independence requires consistent revenue, visible expertise, and a practice that sustains rather than exhausts. Most people get stuck in that gap. They want out, but haven't built the practice yet. As John Younger says in one of our earlier episodes, you can't sell knowledge anymore, but you can sell wisdom. We explore how decades of professional judgment, smart use of technology, and the right partnerships create real competitive advantages for professionals working on their own terms. Let's begin. If you've left a corporate career and caught yourself saying, "I'm just starting out," this episode will change how you think about that. Janine Garner spent 20 years in marketing, finishing as Group Marketing Director for the Oroton Group. She's a best-selling author of 3 books and today runs a 7-figure mentoring practice, helping women over 40 commercialise their expertise. Janine shares why experienced women consistently underprice themselves, her days down, dollars up strategy for earning more while working less, and the 4 roles every independent professional needs in their network. This is the Wisepreneurs Podcast. I'm Nigel Rollins. Janine, welcome to the Wisepreneurs Podcast. Can you tell us something about yourself and where you're from?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me and thank you for all the work that you're doing. I think it's such an incredible gift to share people's stories and their thoughts on how they've built their careers and where they're going. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here. So I am actually originally from the UK. I was born in the UK, born to a farmer, actually. So I grew up on a farm in the north of England, farmer's daughter. At the age of 18, I left home and moved to the Midlands where I started studying, and that actually opened my eyes to possibility and the diversity of the world. From there, I started a career in London, and then at the age of 29, I arrived in Australia, and I arrived literally no job, nowhere to live, had a permanent residency visa, and I had my resume, and I had to start building my career all over again from the age of 29. I now live in Sydney, in the northern beaches of Sydney, run my own business after a 20-year corporate career where I was Group Marketing Director for Oroton Group, looking after the Oroton and Ralph Lauren brands here in Australia and through Asia. And for the last 15 years, oh my goodness, I've been running my own business. I've got 3 children, all still at home, 22, 20 and 17. We're about to enter our final HSC year. And a menagerie of animals at home. 2 dogs, 2 cats, a lizard and a whole heap of fish. So life is a little bit crazy.
That does sound crazy. So what made you want to leave England at a young age? Because that is a young age.
Yeah, well, I think for me, so I'd moved further and further south. When I went to do my degree, I was the first girl in my family and the first girl that had actually gone to uni. My family couldn't afford to send me to university. And I actually ended up applying to the government at the time and was fortunate at the time to receive a grant to go to Aston University to study a Bachelor of Science degree. And I specialised in marketing as part of that degree. And I just never wanted to go home. I never really felt at home in the north of England. I loved it. It's in my blood, but I just had this desire. My spirit just didn't feel settled. And so I went from the Midlands down to London. I had a fabulous time in London working in the fashion industry. I think London is a brilliant place to live as a single person where you can, party hard and enjoy life. And I became an international marketing manager in London, looking after brands such as Jaeger and Viella. And at a very young age, I was at the forefront of loyalty programs. I'm sure you can remember that far back when the first loyalty card came out. It's like, oh my God, technology. And I launched a loyalty program for that company where we had 250,000 people on it. And it was that early stages of tracking data and being able to use the data to build the brand. And then I fell in love. I met my husband in London and we came over to Australia for a holiday. And I landed back in London in February, hit the M25 at 3:00 in the afternoon. It was pitch black. And I went, I can't live here anymore. And so I applied, and I was fortunate enough to get into Australia on the points system. And I arrived as a permanent resident at the age of 29. Literally packed everything in back in London, sold everything. And as I said, arrived with a backpack, a resume, a permanent residency visa, and my now husband. And the rest is history, rebuilding my career from there.
That's a fabulous story. I was actually born in England, in Southampton, but I left as a young child with my parents. But again, the story is trying to afford an education when your parents haven't had that sort of education. A lot of Australians, baby boomers, got a free education from our government in that time, and that created a whole middle class. But one of the things I want to talk to you about is working in London. I've had a couple of guests over the years who, I think one of them was Una Hurley, who's in Ireland, and there's another Australian girl, Tash Menon-Verhool, whose careers really took off in London. So there's something special going on in London, in marketing especially. How did that affect you?
Oh, I think you're spot on. If I sort of jump ahead, it will then make sense to go back. So when I arrived in Australia, I first of all arrived in Melbourne, and I found it really hard to get work. You know, I arrived as a 29-year-old. I'd achieved some remarkable things in England in terms of great stuff to put on your resume, and I couldn't find work. And at the time, you know, I'm now 50. Oh gosh, I turned 55 this year, so this was a while ago. At the time, I reached out to someone for some advice, somebody from professional services. And the advice I got at the time was, Janine, you need to wear a little bit of pink. If you could see me now, I'm wearing a bit of pink. But Janine, you need to wear a bit of pink, and you need to pretend you don't have the answers. That was the career advice I got at the age of 29 when I arrived in Sydney. And if I then sort of track back, I think in the UK, you know, through the university system, through your career, you're pretty much trained to know your stuff. You're trained to, when you go for an interview, be really prepared, not only to answer the questions, but to have the depth to those answers. You're trained to be curious and to explore. And in work, maybe it's because of the sheer scale and size of the population. You know, I don't know what the UK population is now, but compared to Australia, we're probably talking 3 times the size. The proximity to Europe and the US, it's incredibly competitive. And so in the workplace, you say yes, you experiment, you put your hand up to do work, and you're prepared to go that extra mile. Now, I'm talking obviously from my lens as a 29-year-old. And I think when I got here, I remember saying to someone, this is the hardest thing I have ever done. You know, prior to arriving in Australia, I'd run photo shoots around the world. I'd done thousand print runs. You know, we were, as I said, I was managing a CRM system that had 250,000 customers and those transactions, and I'd pitched that into the board for revenue. And that was, you know, that was a technological first at the time. And I came here and it was like the experience didn't matter. And I said to people, one of the hardest things I've ever done is arrive in Australia, because I thought it was going to be easy. I speak the same language, tend to look like most Australians. And I know that's a whole other conversation from a diversity perspective, but it was really hard. There was this definite unconscious bias going on, both from an age perspective and a gender perspective. Culturally, we operate really differently here. So if I think back to England, I remember those first 6 months being here. I was desperate to know what was going on around the world, and the local news at the time would tell me that Flossie Two Shoes had run the Mother's Day race, or Johnny had hit the NRL club, but there was no international landscape. Thankfully, that's changed now. Thankfully, we've got more of an international lens on stuff. And at the same time, I love being here. Interestingly, when I moved up to the northern beaches of Sydney, I didn't realise, but when I was 15 and my mum brought me to Australia for a visit, I remember being on a ferry from Manly going into Sydney and meeting this lady who was an air hostess. And I remember talking to her and I couldn't believe that she lived over here and I couldn't believe that this was her commute. And obviously that planted a seed in me because I am living and commuting in the very way when I was back at as a 15-year-old going, oh my God, this is amazing. This is my home. I class myself as Australian. My kids all born here. And I am absolutely committed to the work that I do here. And I quite like, particularly the current climate that we're in right now. I've got a very international lens on the world. I invest in taking myself overseas to maintain that. But I feel incredible gratitude and appreciation for where we live right now.
Just a quick pause. I've put together 2 free assessments for experienced professionals. One helps you map the professional judgment you've built over your career, and the other helps you audit your reputation and readiness for independent work. Both are found at wisepreneurs.com.au/free-assessments. Now back to the conversation. It's a fabulous country. It is changing though, isn't it? And
it is changing.
We won't go into that, but
no.
There's some concerns, and I think they're worldwide concerns, and I'm hearing
Yes.
it from a lot of places now. But you've still got the energy after all this time. So let's go into some of the stuff that you do. What I can say, I call you portfolio worker because you're a business mentor, a keynote speaker, a best-selling author. You've written 5 books, and I'm just wondering and you've got 3 kids and all those animals, where the hell do you get time, plus the podcast?
Yeah. I think my why, my vision is what drives me. You know, for the early stages of my career, the first half of my life, the first season of my life was very much following the corporate trajectory. That's standard. You leave university. I got myself on a graduate traineeship. I started doubling down and specializing in marketing, and I worked my way up that standard corporate career. My entire corporate life was marketing, understanding consumers, and essentially driving activity on the back of that. And if I go back to childhood, that probably started because, as I said, my dad was a farmer. So as a kid, I'd be on the market stall and I was in charge of selling eggs. So from an early age, I learned the curiosity around human nature, being interested in the stories that people would say. And obviously, you know, my job was to turn them from a half a dozen eggs up to a dozen eggs. And I think my mastery started developing through my corporate career. I became known as, actually in hindsight, I think I was one of those internal entrepreneurs because I couldn't stay long anywhere. If anyone would tell me no, I'd find a way around. The beauty of working in retail is the budgets were never huge. So you had to be really creative and clever about how you would leverage the dollars that you had to have the biggest return possible. And I always had this vision in corporate that marketing stood at the center. Our job was to interpret the desires of the board, the CEO, the CFO, the IT, the retail, whatever it is. Our job was in the middle, bringing it all together and turning it into something that would attract clients into our world. But for me, I would do a lot of things in 2 years that the majority of people would take 5 to do. And I was restless. I could always see opportunity. And I got to an age where, as I said, it would have been 29. I'd had 3 children. They were little at the time. I have still got them, thankfully, but they were little at the time and life was mental. You know, I was a generation with my first child where the maternity leave pay wasn't a thing. So I actually had to go back to work because we arrived in Australia with no real money. And I just remember getting to the top corporately and going, I've lost myself. I am awesome at my job. I can do my job standing up my head. I love it, but I'd lost my passion. Yep. I was busy looking after the board and the shareholders and Mr. Lauren over in the US and my team, and then coming home and the family and kids. but I wasn't feeling inspired. And yet around me, I was starting to have conversations with women that were building their own thing, and I could sense that passion. I was starting to become aware of what was happening outside the boundaries of the workplace. And I believed at the time that there had to be more women out there like me that wanted to have conversations that were intellectually inspired, having depth of conversations, where I was being seen and being engaged with as me, not as the mother, not as the wife, not as the international marketing director, as me. And so what I did, Nigel, is and this is really sort of part of my story and what keeps me going, I reached out to people that inspired me, women, and I invited them to dinner. And that first dinner, there were 6 of us around the table, and I shared what I was feeling. And the conversation just filled my soul for the possibility, the smarts, the intellect, the desire, the vision that people had. And that dinner then became a second dinner. And that second dinner became the birthplace of my first business, which was the LBD Group, which was a community of women like me, essentially a network of women helping each other in corporate. And that's then where I then went, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. And so I took the leap and I left my corporate career at the age of 30 and started running my own thing from my kitchen table. And over the course of my career, I think what connects, the passion has been there. I am relentless in my belief that so many women have more brilliance in them than they currently see. And I don't know if you've read my piece today that I shared, or yesterday that I shared on International Women's Day.
I did.
Check me out on LinkedIn, you'll see it.
I did.
But we have a voice, we have opinions, we have smarts, we have so much more to give. And my work, I totally, with every ounce of my being, believe that when we unleash the brilliance that exists in women, we have the potential to change the world. Because the thing about women is, unlike our beautiful men, which I love, I've got a gorgeous husband. I can tell from our conversations that, you know, you're one of us, as in one of what wants the world to change. I know that women get to a point where they go, if they are financially okay, and their family are okay, they don't acquire more stuff to show their success. What they do is they give back. And they give back to their team, to the people around them, to their community. And I know that the work that I'm doing is fundamentally about helping women become financially and commercially smart, so that is how we create the ripple of change. And so when you look at my career, it's all sort of been part of that. The first business I built was about women. I sold that business. And I sold that business at the time because I'm a big intuitive feeler of when I need to make a move. My speaker bureaus say, God, you're the queen of reinvention. Because I tend to... That little girl that was on that market stall at the age of 8, she's still here. She's constantly watching the world. She's constantly connecting the dots. She's constantly being curious about what people are wanting now. And I see my role right now is about showing the pathway of hope and helping people, taking people on that journey. And if I can get this incredible community of women being financially independent, that is how we'll be able to collectively give back. So my books have followed that journey too. So From Me to We, the first book I wrote was when I first came out of corporate. And it was very much about working together. It was about collaboration. It was about teamwork. And then I got curious and I went, why are people finding it so hard? Like, why is it all so surface level? And my mentor at the time said to me, Janine, how do you keep connected to so many people? How do you see opportunity? How do you do it? And I'm naturally actually quite an introvert. I much prefer these one-on-one conversations than throwing myself into a big room. And he said, you need to codify how you connect. And that became my second book, It's Who You Know, which has been translated into multiple languages and is still selling around the world. And that's essentially about finding the network of you. That networking, as we know it, has become so transactional. It's become all about numbers. AI and technology, unfortunately, is fueling that. And this ability to build this board of advisors around you is a real skill because it requires intentional connection. It requires continued support and input. And that's what I wrote about in that book. And then I got to the point of going, hang on. I was showing people how to connect and network. I'm talking to people about how to work together, but there's still something missing. And that's when I accidentally launched my podcast, because I went on a journey of talking to people that I believed were successful to try and understand what was the tipping point. What was the tipping point from striving and proving yourself to being in flow and being successful? And I also backed that up by taking myself off to Harvard. You can see that, hopefully you can see all the connection points here to just understand the latest thinking in leadership. And I codified those interviews into the 4 laws of brilliance. And my book, Be Brilliant, talks to that. And fundamentally, Nigel, it starts with who you are. And this is then what then led to my continuous work in this space, the keynote speaking I love. My corporate work is being brought into organizations to help them unlock their internal leadership and brilliance and find the talent of the future. And then I work directly with 40-plus-year-old female consultants and advisors, essentially help them unlock their potential and build commercial businesses of their own. Most of my clients in that world have either been made redundant from corporate because of age, let's say, or they've struggled from burnout, much like I did, where I went, this is ridiculous, or they're going, there's got to be a better way. And interestingly, most of them come to me thinking that they're just starting out. And I call BS on that. Yes. I go, you're not just starting out. You have got decades of experience. What we're doing here is bringing together that decades of experience and setting you off in this next season of your life. And that's where I am now. So I have no idea where I'll be in 2 years, Nigel. I just know that this work is part of me and what I do. And I'm constantly curious and constantly looking at how I can do my best work, working with people that I adore working with, and working in the way that I want to work. I'm on a mission to help those women, but to also rewrite the rules of business. Like, we don't need to build a business based on a 50-year-old white guy's rule of running a business. Like, we're multi-dimensional. We can't work in that way. And why should we? And, you know, we were talking off air about, as a 55-year-old, there's no norm. There's no pathway to being 60, 70, 80 years old as a woman. There's nothing out there. There are no role models. Yes, there are the odd few. I'm fortunate to be part of an international community called the International Women's Forum, and there are amazing women in there, but there's very few women role models that are still operating and in work that publicly we know of, that are visually there in the spotlight for us to follow. So it's our job to do that. It's our job to create whatever that future looks like.
I think you've hit it on the nail there. The issue there is they've got this wisdom and they don't always recognise it when they come to you, but our job in many ways is to help them express that and explain why they can help, so it doesn't get wasted. So I'd like to go back to some of your books. You said the first one was From Me to We. And I think that's exactly what you've been doing. I think all through your career is the collaboration and finding collaborators. And I think one of the issues in Australia, probably when you first came here, it probably wasn't that way inclined. We've got a bit of a strange culture in Australia. It's not gung-ho like it is in America, where I think, you know, you probably would have been huge there compared to here. And that's the issue here, is that it is a battle. So tell me a little bit about what you mean commercial collaboration or collective impact of working together.
Yeah.
And then I'd like to work through the other books as well, because I think they're brilliant.
Well, the reality is no one can be successful alone. And I think we're living in a world right now where we have no idea. The adaptive landscape that we are in is forever changing. We've only got to think back to, let's say, this time last year and where we're at this time last year and the amount of change that has happened, both on a macro scale, financially, economically, humanitarian. Like there's so much wobble going on in the world. And because of the connectedness of the world, that macro challenge is now coming into us commercially here in business, that businesses in Australia are fundamentally the big boy people, boys, girls, you see, gendered language there, are still impacted by what's happening globally. And then it's coming into the home at a micro level, that individuals worrying about themselves and their families, as is right, as is truth. But what my fear is that it's actually leading to more siloed thinking, that in the place of fear, our solution is to go back into ourselves, into our me space, where it becomes all about me. It becomes competitive. It becomes protecting my own backyard. It becomes, this is my spot. And we are never going to resolve the challenges of the current without working together.
Yep.
And working together isn't just about putting people into a room to blue sky. That doesn't work. Whiteboarding and vision boarding and planning, it doesn't work, because true togetherness requires us as individuals to really know ourselves, with courage and bravery, get curious about the person across the table. And that is what is missing. So collaboration in the early days was fundamentally getting people together to work together. My view is, first of all, it has to be a willingness to ask those difficult questions, to get to know each other, a willingness to be corrected, a willingness to relearn all the stuff that you thought to be true, to actually change it, to move forward. And that's hard, because generationally we are conditioned in our belief systems. Generationally, whether it be through age, gender, culture, where you've come from, whatever it is, unconsciously, we've all been programmed. And the hardest thing right now, true collaboration will only happen if we are willing to actually properly engage from a place of curiosity, a willingness to learn, a willingness to have our perspective change, a willingness to go, I don't know, as a 55-year-old woman, I am shit scared of AI because I don't understand it. But I'm okay with that. Can you come and help me? Not stop looking at it because it's my way and this is the way I've always done. Now, as a woman in business, this is what we've faced for so many years, that the way to do business, the way to build brands, the way to run our teams was very much driven by a male-dominated way of leadership. And that's not working anymore. And in this adaptive world that we are in, we have to be willing to sit in the uncomfortable. We have to be willing to not have the answers. We have to be willing to experiment and fail. We have to be willing to allow the next version of success to appear and to become. And that's really hard. That's really hard for leaders to get their head around. And I think back to my corporate days, and this is why I love my work right now, because in corporate, I've been in those rooms where you can present the ideas, but at the end of the day, the majority of decisions, you can't sit there and go, well, I'm not sure if this is going to work or not, but let's try. And then to back up, oh, it really failed, is really hard. Yeah. So we've got systemic issues, and until we get this a next generation of leaders through, it's going to be like that. So when I talk about collaboration, it's not just about the transactional nature of getting people into a room to work together. It's the transformational nature of when we get different thinking and overlay a curiosity and overlay a learning from each other, and the willingness to go, I'm curious about why you disagree with me there. Can you explain it? oh, cool. Let me think about that for a while. Until we get that beautiful melting pot of diversity around the table, collaboration is only ever going to be X percent. It's never going to be that 100% momentum. And so in From Me to We, I pretty much share it philosophically from that of, you know, the need for courage, the need for curiosity, the need for perspective gathering, the need to get different thinking around the table. And when I talk to my clients right now where they'll go, I want to work with X, or there's this opportunity to present at Y or have a stand at, I go, before you say yes, get clear on, number one, why are you doing it? And ask the other person why. And it's okay that your whys are different. Because for you, it might be a commercial reason. For somebody else, it might be a learning opportunity. For someone else, it might be, I'm testing some IP. But get clear on the why and listen and own and understand each other's whys first. I then go, before you say yes, understand what success looks like for each other. Because it doesn't have to be the same. But ask, what does success look like for you in this space? Then get clear on who is involved in the work and who's bringing what to the work, and then how you're going to behave before you say yes. Most people say yes because they're following shiny stuff, they're collaborating because of possibility, they think that this is what's going on, and it always leads to disappointment. It's that whole humanity piece of, absolutely, we've got to work together. There's no way we're going to solve any business problems, any team challenges, any world issues unless we start having a brave conversation.
Okay, let's dive into that a little bit. One of my recent guests was Melissa Lieberman, who's an executive coach, and she talks about exactly what you're doing, that you do need a mentor, or do you call yourself a mentor or a coach?
I call myself a mentor, but I tend to coach as well. I'm very much probably more from that mentor perspective.
So you are part of a collaboration when you work with a client. Yeah. But one of the other things Melissa was telling me, that she's starting to bring people in to help her with her business. She's brought in a fractional CFO, a chief financial officer, to help her with the financials. Yeah. She's also brought in a chief operating officer. So when we are talking about, say, people who work for themselves, they bring in a collaborative team. They have the coach or the mentor, like yourself, and then they bring in other people, and some of them bring in people like me to do the marketing back end. So that's a collaboration that they've got to get used to. There are going to be, and there are already some who are $1 million consultants on their own. And I think we're going to find more of those. But they still need that collaborative team.
Absolutely.
So what do you think about those thoughts?
Oh, I totally agree with you. I mean, if we look at our business, we are in that 7-figure plus. In terms of fixed resources in the team, we're a small, lean, agile team. And I have a mentor. I pay a lot of cash to my mentor. Yep. And ever since I left corporate, 20% of my income I pay in personal development or having a mentor. I also have a financial advisor, accountant, who's helping me strategically plan out the right moves that I want to make over the next 5 years. And then we pull on various people depending on what we need. So we absolutely need people. And I would suggest that every person that hits those successful levels from a business number perspective definitely brings people around them. We need sounding boards. We need advisors. We need teachers. And that's what I ended up writing about in It's Who You Know, where, so many people network in totally the wrong way. We've been brought up to believe that, networking is going to big events and meeting people. And I call that very transactional networking. We're often asked to go to those events through our work. And I go, it's purely business development. It is nothing to do with you. Yep. It is about what is right for the business. Do not underestimate that this is a sales exercise. And there's a place for that. Every single person's in the business of selling, whether you're selling a product, whether you're selling your smarts, whether you're in HR selling people and talent, whether you're in tech, every single one of us is selling every single day. So we've got to do that, all right? 100% we've got to do that. But the fundamental thing that has been missing, and I wrote It's Who You Know I think about 8 years ago, and I'm still being asked to speak about it. I'm still being brought into corporates to train on that stuff. Is what I talk about in there, the thing that we've forgotten is the network of ourselves. Your net worth is who you have around you. Now, too many of us, it's set in stone. It's the same people for 10, 20, 30 years, and fundamentally, they're friends. What I teach in that book is I go, okay, and I do this, if I look over here, if you could see me looking, my network is over here. Every year I go, what do I want to achieve this year? You talked about my energy. I'm really clear on making big moves every year. What is the thing? What is the thing I want to achieve this year? And I build my annual plan based around 4 key areas. What do I want to achieve in the business? What are the moves in the business? What are the projects, not the everyday stuff? What are the big things that I want to do in the business over the next 12 months? I then think about what are the financial goals this year? Not just turnover or profit, but it could be the giving back. It could be paying off debt. It could be investing. I don't know, whatever it is. But then the other 2 really important ones for me are relationships. The people that feed my soul. The things that I am going to remember when I'm in my rocking chair. To me, success is a long table. So those people that are at the table with me, what do I want to do this year in terms of investing those relationships? And most people forget that stuff. They go, when I've got enough money, when I move jobs, I'll spend time with the kids. And it's one of the things that frustrates me about many women in corporate where, they're doing it for their kids and then they're working all the hours God sends. They're exhausted. They're putting their health at risk. I go, stop. There are only so many summers you've got. Spend the time now. And then the final one is for myself. What is the goal for myself? And I think about having those goals, and then I look at who are the people I know. And I get very intentional about thinking about who are my promoters? Who are the people in my world that love what I do, that rave about me, that act as my marketing machine, the ones that are my walking billboard, my cheerleaders, that even when I'm not in the room, they're going to both talk positively about me and back me up or have my back if someone's not speaking so good about me. So who are my promoters? The second thing I think about is, with that plan in mind, who are my teachers? Who's going to help me deliver this plan? Who do I need to find? Who's going to unlock my thinking? Who's going to teach me what I need to know? Because to me, even in this tech advanced world that we're in, what we think is our competitive advantage. What we know isn't. What we know, we can find anywhere online. But our nuance is how we interpret what we think, our perspective and what we're noticing. And too many people are not investing in that. Yep. They're not continuing to grow. So I'm intentional. And that's exactly what I've done with my mentor right now. He scares the bejesus out of me because I don't understand what he's saying half the time. Yep. But every day he's pushing me to learn what I need to learn to deliver on the plan that we've got this year. The third group of people we need are what I call pit crew. And they are the ones that really care about you. And it can't be husbands, wives, lovers, mums or dads. Who professionally is looking out for you? Who listens with care, but then because they know what you're trying to do this year, they wrap their arms around you and then they get you back on track. The people that don't engage in drama or gossip or fueling the fear, but the ones that are looking out for you, that are absolutely there in the background, making sure you're moving forward. And I am forever grateful for my pit crew because, as you will appreciate through life, there's loads of bumps, if not massive hurdles to get through. And then the fourth group of people is we need butt kickers, which is probably what I'm imagining what you are when you're brought into organizations. You're one of those individuals that is that action taker, helping people do the stuff that they need to do to move their business forward. And that, to me, is why we need people around us. The individuals, and here's the thing, Nigel, God knows how many people I've shared this IP with and spoken to around the world. When I ask out of the 4, how many of you have got 4? I reckon I'm lucky if 1 to 2% of the room put their hand up. Most people have, when they think about it the way I think about it, 2 to 3. What does that say about us? What it says to me is so many of us are robotically going through life, pursuing our dreams, hoping that one day we'll get there. And then, of course, we're being challenged left, right and centre in business as we are, and we haven't got the people around us, the support crew, that are helping us navigate the world. Because business is up and down. Business is crazy. There are times where I've had $50 left in the bank and I'm wondering what on earth I'm going to do. Like, it's hard. And we need the people around us that fuel us, that promote us, that keep us going because they care. Not because there's anything in it for them, but because they care about you achieving your dreams and goals. And that's the role I play for so many of my clients, helping them frame up their vision. So I hope that answered your question.
No, that's a perfect answer, because I think the whole point is some people think, oh, it's expensive, I can't afford this. But I don't believe if you're serious about continuing on and you have had a professional background and you have got your financials right, because not everyone can actually do this, that they should get that mentor. And you're spending a significant amount on a mentor. Yep. Now, I must admit, my mentor was very generous. He never charged me ever, but we did work together. So he made quite a lot of money out of the consults and the work we did. But he would often ask me a question and then my mouth would go dry and then he'd say, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And I'd go, what do I do? And that challenge is very rare, I think. I mean, it is. I think coaching often tells you how to do things, whereas the mentoring gets you to reflect on those sorts of things. But I can see why it's valuable, and I can see how you're doing that for your clients as well. You know, I can't say it enough. People do need to get some help.
Oh, we do. We've all got stuff that gets in the way. I mean, gosh, I could spend a whole podcast talking about the stuff that gets in my way, my self-doubt, my imposter syndrome, having grown up in the north of England, the money stories I tell myself. But here's the thing, you can either choose to use those as excuses, or you can go and understand yourself and go, okay, right, that makes sense. You can't change your past. And some people have had horrendous pasts. Some people, it looks like they've had the golden, the what do we call it?
Silver spoon.
That's the word. But everyone has got stuff, everyone at different levels. Now we can choose to sit there and it hold us back. Or we can choose to understand our stories and move forward. And I'm very much that latter. I've spent, in that investment, there's been a lot of coaching, personal coaching, understanding my life, understanding, the stories, all the trauma stuff. But now I go and that trauma comes back and I go, there she is again. All right, Janine. Take it out, let's move forward, because the work and my future is what's important. And, being totally vulnerable here, it really was about changing the game for my kids, changing their lives. And to change their future, I had to change me and my future, because they have no real understanding of the life that I grew up as. And I love that. We've changed it. We've changed the game for them, because every single one of us has got voices in our heads, every single one of us. And there's hundreds of voices in our heads. So this is one of the things I learned when I was at Harvard, and this is how much it triggered me. So I was in Harvard. There were 60 of us in the room from 22 different countries. You can imagine the perspective of the conversations. It was awesome. And the lecturer, Professor Ron Heifetz, incredible guy, started sharing this work with me, and it got to the end and I literally just burst into tears in front of all these people, because oh my God, I now understand why I'm so passionate about the work I do. But he shared that we've all got these hundreds of voices. We have professional voices that have taught that for some reason we've listened to, that have told us what it means to be a marketeer, what it means to be a senior leader, what it means to be a woman in work. And we can all remember those voices, the good, the bad and the ugly. We can see them. It could be lecturers, it could be first bosses, it could be current bosses. All these voices we store in our heads. The second lot of voices are what he calls familial voices. What it means from a family, society. It's like what it means to be a woman in 2026, what it means to be a 55-year-old woman in 2026, what it means to be a son or a daughter or a grandparent, or a mother. Again, all those voices that we've listened to and stored in our heads. And then the final voices, which are probably the most challenging, are what we call ancestral voices. The things that you don't even know where they've come from, but ancestrally they have been passed down to you and they're in your genes. Grandmothers and great-grandmothers about what it means to be a woman of this family, what it means to be part of this culture. And so we've all got this going on. And if you imagine they're all following you, they're all behind us telling us how to behave. And here's what gets interesting. You've got to understand it, because each of those voices has got the same stuff going on that's driven their behaviour. And so understanding all these dynamics that are at play actually give you incredible fuel and power when you understand it and you own it and you go, okay, that's why I'm the most remarkable human I am. And I am unique and I am brilliant. And now it's time to take this and move forward with it. And so every time I've made a move, done something different, sold a business, started a business, thrown in a career, changed things, I've had to really dig deep intuitively and I've had to tap into that power and I just go, like, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? And that's where my energy comes from. I just keep going because the work needs to be done. And there's different ways of how I'm delivering my work.
And what I'm hearing too is that when you do work with a client, you're sensing that as well. Or we call it intuition, but really what it is a lifetime of what we call pattern matching. Our brain or our bodies absorb this so that when you talk with your women who are clients, you can sense that. But the other deep thing underneath there is a lifetime of marketing. And I don't think people realise how powerful marketing is, because that's what a business is. It's finding, well, what do we say? Seth Godin talks about, who's it for? What's the promise? And what change are you going to make? And I can hear that in you. And that's an encouragement. All right, one, I'm probably taking up a lot of your time now, commercialising what you know. How do you work with that?
Yes, great question. So we spoke before off air about there are so many women that come to me that are incredibly smart. They have had senior positions in corporate. They have run departments, run teams. They've achieved incredible things on paper. And they go out on their own, or they hit a level of seniority. I'm about to work with someone in government who's struggling with a lot of self-doubt. And they hit this place of, I'm going to do something else. And the language they use is, I'm just starting out. I'm a new coach, or I've just started my marketing agency, or I've just gone on my own. And I call BS on that because they have got decades of experience. They have negotiated, they have created, they have managed, they have led, they have picked themselves up off the floor, they have sold in ideas, they have influenced, they have juggled, they have created. They've done so much already. And I go, you are not starting out. You're not starting out. So immediately there has to be a mindset shift that even, in corporate, when they hit those senior positions, I don't know if I can do this. What do you mean? You've proved, no one's going to give you that senior job if they don't think you can do it. So it's never about having the ability, having the smarts. It is about believing in yourself. And so the commercialization for me, like you said with Seth Godin, first of all, so again, what happens, many of us build something, many people build things based on what other people want. I go, first of all, you got to get really clear on who it is that you want to work with in this next season of your world. Who is? I don't care, because we get in our own way as well, right? Because we're experienced, we can work with anyone and everyone and do lots of different things. But I go, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Who are the people you want to work with now and into the future? All right, given that, what are their problems right now?
Yes.
What are they worrying about that you can help them with? And then I go, okay, now tell me what you know. And what I do is I commercialize that. We turn what they think is nothing into something that is everything. So getting really clear, I get them to, and it's hard because most people think top bit of brain, and I get people to think really deeply around what is it that you know? What do you reckon that you do to help? What are your truths? What's your enemy right now? And I package that up into IP, into clarity around why they're doing their work, how they're doing their work, and what their product is that they're selling. And it could be programs, it could be coaching, it could be speaking, it could be writing a book, it could be launching a podcast. But this is where the 101 of marketing comes in. That absolute clarity and focus to make sure you're talking to your ideal clients. The commercialization, Nigel, is because women are not charging enough. So most people, when I start working with them, you're probably picking this up through the conversation. I'm very honest. I say the thing you love about me is I see possibility. Yep. I can see possibility. And I have this innate ability to see where you're going to be in 3 years if you follow the plan. I can see it. I can see 3 years ahead. So the thing you'll dislike about me is I'll slow you down, because the commercial cadence and patience is critical. And usually the first thing that I do is we look at their pricing, and I will say to them, you could earn more working in McDonald's drive-thru. Because in their desire to win business, in their desire to do the work, they underprice themselves. Or I had a conversation with a lady yesterday. She goes, oh my God, Janine, I've just sold in $12,000 worth of business. I go, brilliant, tell me about it. And she's like, well, I'm doing these workshops and this and this and this and this and this. And I go, hang on. If we now break that down, you're like $250 an hour. That's ridiculous with 30 decades of experience. Come on. So it's this worthy piece that is the commercialization piece. And my entire strategy from a business perspective is days down, dollars up. I want to work less, but earn more money.
Yes.
And so to do that, you've got to position yourself. You've got to be brave enough to put out to your ideal clients who you are, what you believe, how you can help, and positioning, marketing 101 for yourself. It's really easy to do it for a brand. But if you're trying to build yourself internally in a corporate, or if you're trying to sell yourself as a business owner, it's yourself. And you have to market yourself internally, in organizations, and externally. What do you stand for? What do you believe? Why are you doing the work they're doing? And a lot of women, I find that really scary.
And you said it perfectly. It does. You could see in 3 years where they could be, and use the magic word. What does success look like? My mentor used to say that over and over again, even when he worked with clients. What does success? We've got to define it, see what it looks like. And what you're doing is you're seeing what they can do, but they've still got to do the hard work. And
they have to do the work.
They've still got to finance themselves through there. So it is quite a bit of a journey there. Okay. That's fantastic, because the main thing you're telling them, and that I'm trying to tell them as well, they need to get somebody to straighten them out and get them on the right track. Otherwise, they'll drift and lose money for years. Whereas they're better off to spend, if they get a package or a payout, invest it wisely. Even if it's $10,000 or $20,000, they're more likely to accelerate early.
Yeah.
So, Janine, what else do you think they should hear?
Okay, well, here's the thing that anyone that's listening here that maybe either at a senior level or a point in their careers where they're thinking of what's next. So it could be that you've got a payout coming. It could be that you're starting to think about building something of your own. I go, what an awesome opportunity that is. My advice always is get the balance right. So first of all, get very, very clear on what this next season is about. What is the work you want to be doing that brings you joy? Who are the people you want to work with that bring you joy? And how do you want to work in this next season? I've got a client that's in her 60s that said to me, Janine, I want to work with CEOs and I only want to work out of my caravan and I want to work X amount of hours a day. And we've created that business. The vision creates the pathway. But vision and hope and manifesting yes alone will not do it. You have to do the work. And as soon as you can, get the right advice around you that can take what you know and commercialize it so you are earning money from the get-go. Get the right people around you that understand what it is that you want to do and are going to help you build that. And get the finances in place so that you can invest in the right things at the right time that will allow you to build what it is that you want. You don't need a Fandangle website straight away. I've got clients that are starting their email from a spreadsheet. You know, you've got people, but don't underestimate that just because you were X person in corporate, when you go out on your own, it doesn't happen magically straight away. So invest, get the right people, build that plan, and be brave enough to own everything that you've done and know that the world is big enough that there are people out there that need you.
That is brilliant. Fantastic advice. So Janine, how will people find you?
The best place, so you can find me at my website, janinegarner.com.au. I am very active on LinkedIn, so you can go and find me there and message me there or send me an email, janine@janinegarner.com.au, and I will reply. And I'd love to hear from any of you and love to hear what you took from this podcast. And thank you again, Nigel.
Fantastic. And I would recommend that listeners reach out to Janine on LinkedIn there. Fantastic. Thank you, Janine.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, Nigel.
Thanks for listening. If today's conversation resonated, two things are worth checking out. The free assessments at wisepreneurs.com.au/free-assessments. They'll help you get clear on what your experience is actually worth and where to focus on next. And sign up for the Wisepreneurs newsletter. Practical ideas for building a practice on your own terms every Tuesday. Sign up at wisepreneurs.com.au/newsletter. I'm Nigel Rawlins. See you next time.